we are going to start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O Blessed Mother, you received the good news of the incarnation of Christ, your Son, with faith and trust. Grant your protection to all pregnant mothers facing difficulties. Guide us as we strive to make our parish communities places of welcome and assistance for mothers in need. Help us to become instruments of God's love and compassion. Mary, Mother of the Church, graciously help us build a culture of life and a civilization of love, together with all people of goodwill, to the praise and glory of God, the Creator and lover of life. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, let's get started. Okay, so some of you are probably wondering, you saw our ads and you're wondering, okay, what's happening? Some of you are maybe politically active, some of you might not be. This is going to hopefully speak to everyone. We might share some things that might be a bit more basic if you're new to pro-life advocacy, but hopefully this will be very helpful to you. So what is happening right now? Well, for 45 years, an amendment called the Hyde Amendment has said that the federal government cannot fund abortion with tax dollars. It cannot fund elective abortion, meaning I believe that there are still exceptions for rape and incest. But elective abortion cannot be funded by tax dollars. That means federal contributions to Medicaid. Basically anything that the federal government spends money on cannot include elective abortion. The Hyde Amendment is what's known as a rider, meaning it is tacked on to a bill that is passed by Congress. In this case, basically every appropriations bill that determines government spending has this Hyde Amendment rider. But right now, there are some powerful, if somewhat radicalized, members of Congress who want to push the envelope and take away these protections, this rider, which prevents taxpayer-funded abortion. So both Democrats and Republicans have supported this for nearly half a century. For 44 years, every member of Congress that has voted for an appropriations bill has voted for this, that money cannot be spent on abortion. And we estimate that in that time, in that 44 years, over 2.4 to 2.5 million babies have been saved because of this, because taxpayer dollars are not going to abortion, because low-income women who might receive Medicaid can be offered basically government-funded abortion as a solution to the problems they're having with their pregnancy. I'm guessing you're here because we want to stop this, right? So we want to stop these radicalized government leaders from forcing Americans to pay for abortions with our tax dollars. We want to prevent more low-income women from being basically coerced by being offered government-funded abortion and nothing else. So how do we do this? And we're going to move on to the next slide to talk about how we can stop this from happening, how we can protect the Hyde Amendment and stop taxpayer-funded abortion from becoming a reality. Well, what will stop this is simply massive numbers of people contacting their members of Congress. Even though there are some radical members of Congress who are really trying to force this through, this is not a winning position. And frankly, both parties know it. When there are a lot of members, regardless of party, hearing that their constituents, the people who put them in office, are upset, they will be talking to the leadership in the House, to the leadership in the Senate. They will be talking to the leadership because they want to get reelected, right? Even if they have had pro-choice positions in the past, they want to get reelected. And even pro-choice members of Congress, again, for 44 years, have still said that taxpayer-funded abortion is beyond the pale. So if these members of Congress get a lot of feedback, the party leadership will basically have to listen because, again, they want their members to get reelected. So if they get a lot of feedback, they're going to have to listen. They'll know this is unpopular and they want to stay in power. So your goal, which is on our next slide, your goal is to get the word out to as many people as possible through as many avenues as possible to contact their member of Congress and ask them to protect the Hyde Amendment and to prevent taxpayer-funded abortion from becoming a reality in this country. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Our action items that we have for you then is to sign the petition, right, which we're going to show you in a minute, to contact your members of Congress, and to activate others to do the same. And we can move on to the next slide. So now we're going to show you the petition. So you can go on to the website, notaxpayerabortion.com. I'll actually just share it with you right now, and so you can see the petition yourself. Just give me one moment to share my screen and to be transferred. Can you change me into a, thank you. Now I have the ability to do that. While I am shifting over to this, again, we're going to be answering all questions at the end, but just so for people who do want to know, we are going to be recording this and also giving you a little sheet of like key takeaways. So you don't have to write down everything I say. We are going to be recording this for you to listen to later, and also sharing our key takeaway sheet for you. So just so you know that before I now go into sharing my screen. So when you go to notaxpayerabortion.com, this is what you're going to see. We have our petition that you can sign here with your email and your full name. And when you scroll down, you'll get a little bit more background on Hyde, which we'll be talking about here. And this is the actual text of our petition that, again, you can read and then add your name. And we do want you to know that we are collecting as many names as we can right now. It's really important to get names in this petition because we're going to be sharing this with every single member of Congress. We're going to be collecting all these names and basically saying, here's how many tens of thousands, hopefully hundreds of thousands, or millions of people are opposed to taxpayer-funded abortion, including your own constituents. So we're going to be sending that to them. We want to have eventually a ticker on this site that shows just how many thousands and thousands of people have signed the petition so they can see just how unpopular it is, as well as receiving a copy, which we will give to them, our office will give to them. The other reason it's really important to sign this petition and get your friends to sign the petition is because once you're signed up and you have signed the petition and we have your email, we're going to be able to send you timely information about updates, about what the federal government is doing on Hyde, right? What Congress is doing. We might end up having some more things for you to do. There might be a time when we might ask you to do a phone call or to get more people activated. We might have more information for you about what's going on with the Hyde Amendment. So we want you to be able to have that information and to be able to email you that as it comes along. As soon as you put in your email and you sign the petition, we will email you an action alert. And that action alert is really important to do. Basically, this action alert, and I will take you now to the Action Center. This will give you access to it as soon as you sign up. But when you go to the Action Center, sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit. So the Action Center looks like this. We're going to be sending you directly to this action alert. And it will say this text, and it will go to your representative and to your senators. And again, I know some of you have asked whether or not this is even worthwhile, right? Because again, what if I'm in a blue state? What if my congressman, is super pro-choice? Well, again, like what we said before, they do want to know what you say. I actually used to work for Congress. I used to work for a member of Congress. I was legislative assistant, and I regularly answered phones and looked at mail and checked our email system. And I can tell you with confidence, every single communication that a constituent, meaning someone who my congressman represented in his district, in our little part of the state, every communication that we had was recorded. Every email we send is recorded. And if there are lots of people sending in something, it is something that the staffers make the member of Congress aware of. And they're like, hey, a ton of people from our district really hate this bill. And we're going to have to be accountable to them if we support it. So it really does matter, even if you think it's not going to do much difference, because you might not change your member's mind on life, on abortion, but you can let them know that taxpayer-funded abortion is really unpopular. And then they might go to their leadership, the majority leadership or minority leadership, whatever it is, and tell them that, hey, this is not a good idea. This is very unpopular. So that's why it's really important to do the action alert. Once you have done the action alert, we recommend that you spend a little time in this little action center that we have here, right? So when you go up, after you fill out the action alert, which is step one, baseline, you want to do it, get all your friends to do it, super important. Or I guess I should say step two after doing the petition, right? So step three is going up here to find your officials. Some of you, again, might already be active, know who your senators are, who your congressman is, but a lot of us don't, and that's okay. You can go right here and find your officials. I'm going to show you by example here, just putting your zip code. I am putting in the zip code for Arlington, Virginia, and I'm going to just type in a little fake address. And right here, all of my representatives pop up in federal government, right? So obviously we know our president, we know our vice president, we might know our senators. Both of my senators are, Democrats who have had varying support for abortion in the past. And then I see my representative is here, Don Beyer Jr. So maybe I know something about them, maybe I don't. It's always a good idea to learn a little bit about your congressman. When we click on the name, representative, we find out a lot of information. We see a phone number where we could reach out to him. The local offices, although frankly, both the local and capital offices might be closed because of the pandemic, but they're still, checking their email. Their staffers are working remotely. So I can find out where to leave a message for them. And I also see their website, right? I can click on their website, learn a little bit more about the positions that they hold just for my own information. And I find their social media handles. And this is another great way to be in contact with our congressmen. So after we have signed the action alert and sent it to our senators and our congressmen, it's a good idea to take a look at this and to see different ways we might continue to follow up and engage with our members of Congress. One really important thing to keep in mind, as I said before, again, I used to work on the Hill, and I can say confidently that, again, staffers and members of Congress do listen to their constituents who they represent, even when they're on the other side. They might not agree with them, but they do take everything into account. And they do this by systems that basically record every message or voicemail or call or interaction they have with you. They track everything. So it's extremely important to always, in every interaction, to be polite, to be respectful, to try to speak using the clearest and most gracious language that you can, because we are representing the cause of life, right? And if we come off like we are angry and screaming, how could you murder a baby? Obviously, we're not undermining the importance of abortion or the tragedy, the horror of abortion. But if we use an accusatory tone and inflammatory language, they're going to remember that for a very long time. And it could discount not only our individual opinion as a constituent, but also, frankly, their view of pro-lifers as a whole. So it's really, really important to be as gracious as you can be and as clear as you can be, and especially to be clear that you are a constituent. So for example, say I am this guy's constituent. I'm going to click on Twitter. I could potentially go to his Twitter account and comment on something. And it doesn't even have to be something relevant. It could be totally unrelated, like the American Rescue Plan, which actually isn't totally unrelated, but it could be something like vaccinations or the environment or schools. It could be anything. And you could just say, hey, at representative's name, I'm a constituent, and I want you to protect the Hyde Amendment and to stop taxpayer-funded abortions. So that's clear. That's a clear message. And their staff will look at that. Again, it's probably most important that you interact with them through emails and phone calls, and again, especially our action alerts. But that's another way that you can engage.
So if you go to respectlife.org/no-taxpayer-abortion- here in the browser bar, you'll come to this resource page. So as you can see, we are featuring the webinar registration just to make sure that as many people who wanted to join, had that opportunity. We'll be posting the webinar recording on this page when it is available, as well as emailing it to you. And if you scroll down, there's a little bit of an explanation. As Kat showed you, we have more information on notaxpayerabortion.com. So down here, and then the petition, but this just gives you a little bit of a summary. And then we have a sample announcement that can be used in a variety of places, and I'll give you some suggestions on that in a moment. But just for now, know that it's just very, very simple, very short. Stop your tax dollars from going to abortion. notaxpayerabortion.com. So just, again, really emphasizing, trying to get a massive quantity of people to sign the petition. Then the next resource we have is the flyer. So we will be making everything available in both English and Spanish. We're in the midst of that. So I apologize it's not up at the moment, but we'll do that as quickly as possible. So to get access to the flyer, you would just click View and Download. That will take you to our resource page, and then you just click this link, No Taxpayer Abortion Flyer. So you're just looking for the blue text that indicates a hyperlink. Click on that, and then we have this, and then you would just right click, and well, I have a Mac, so it's a little bit odd, but you would either click Save That, Download, or Open in Preview, and then it opens up in a Word document. Or I'm sorry, PDF document. So that's that. Then we have the graphics. So again, these ones are English and Spanish. If you click on either of the buttons, it'll take you to all 4 versions. So Sleeping Baby is this one. If you click on it, and again, just right click, save image to downloads, or wherever else you want to save it. And just go back, and then there's another option here, and you can look at the others later, but just to give you a sense of things. And then we have an infographic. And this graphic is actually the same information. If you go to notaxpayerabortion.com and then click Learn More, it'll take you to this information here, which is this exact same information that is in this infographic. And again, everything will be made available in both English and Spanish. We're just in the midst of getting that taken care of. So the infographic, basically, an infographic is an easily digestible information that's broken down into bite sizes, often using graphics to illustrate the point. So for example, this has broad public support, so just a little symbol here. And, so for example, the broad public support includes women and men across a range of income levels and racial diversity. It also includes people who are pro-life and those who are pro-choice. Something else, without the Hyde Amendment and related policies, getting rid of the amendment would likely lead to many more lives lost through abortion, and states' health benefits would likely be held hostage in the sense that they would be forced to either include elective abortion in Medicaid or be kicked out of the federal Medicaid program. So that's just some information there. You can use this on its own as it's an image file. So again, you can just right click to save the image to your computer, or you can use some of these bite-sized text pieces. I'd recommend you use the entire thing rather than just a single bullet point, but you could use the text pieces, little blurbs. Just be sure to include the citations here if you want, and if there's a place for that. Generally speaking, I would say you can do that with the text itself, but just don't crop the image, and don't make any changes or additions. It's just because of the licensing restrictions that we're under. We do try to make everything available that we can. It's just the way licensing works for graphics and images. But do feel free to now that I'm thinking about it, we'll provide you with a Word document with this information so that it's easier to copy and paste. So you could use the text on its own with attribution to the USCCB and making sure to include the citations here that are down here. But we'll provide that to you in a Word document and just post it on this page. So something like view and download image, and then just look in the same box for where we'll post the link to the Word version. So again, going back to the timeline, we're looking to roll out these things such as the graphics, the flyer, the infographic, to have all of that public and published or sooner. And the people to connect with on this, again, consider thinking, definitely meet with your pastor, definitely loop in the Respect Life committee and coordinate with them to make sure, one, that they're aware of what's going on and the threat and, the urgent need for people to contact Congress, but also just to make sure that you don't step on any toes in case they have other things happening in the parish at the same time. And also because they have an established group already. So you want to respect what they're trying to accomplish and achieve, and just make sure that you're both working together. Another person, like I said before, the parish secretary, this is somebody who will know the workings of the parish, what's going on in the parish life, events that are happening. And, they may have insight into the prayers of the faithful for a given, weekly mass, the Sunday mass, the daily masses, the newsletters that are going out. They'll have an overall perspective that will be very helpful to you in trying to strategize where to ask for things to be done. And that's the other thing, is you want to make your request as simple and as clear as possible. The adage goes, if you ask a person to do 3 things, they'll do none. But if you ask them to do 1 thing, they'll do that 1 thing. So try to keep it to one request at a time. And then recognizing that a lot of people are not familiar with the threat of taxpayer-funded abortion. Here are just some points. Again, we will be sending you the slides in a follow-up email, but just to quickly review, to try to explain the situation and what you're trying to accomplish. Federal policy that has saved 2.4 million lives is in grave danger. Without the Hyde Amendment, tax dollars would be spent on abortion. It has had bipartisan support for 45 years at the levels of Congress, the president, and the public. And so what you're trying to do is raise awareness in the parish so that your congressional leaders will continue to protect the most vulnerable. In terms of where you can use the resources, these are just some ideas to get you started. You don't have to do all of them, although the more the better. You can certainly, if you think of something else, please shoot us an email at prolife, that's all one word, at usccb.org so that we can amplify your great ideas as much as we can. But in the meantime, these are just some examples of where you can start thinking. So in the bulletin itself, something that might be suitable for that specifically would be especially one of the simpler square graphics I showed you, because they're very short, very to the point. They grab your eye. You could also use the sample text of the announcement if you don't have the space for a graphic. On bulletin boards, you could hang up the flyer and put a stack of the flyers if your parish is, distributing paper. I'm not sure in terms of what the restrictions are in different parts of the country, but if they are distributing paper, you could put a stack of the flyers beneath the bulletin board so that people can take it with them and take action, rather than having to stand at the bulletin board and read and then take a picture of it with their phone and all that kind of thing. And you could also use the parish newsletter. This would be another place where you could include the graphics or the announcement, link to the flyer. The flyer does have its own PDF link. So if you go to where I showed you it is on respectlife.org, click the flyer, click the PDF link. And then that, if you look in your browser bar, that's a hyperlink that then you can put into other things so that you don't have to just download it. You can actually just link people straight to the document. So it's just the same as any other web page. And on your website, you could put the infographic. On social media, you could use the graphics, use the sample announcement, directing people to the petition as your post text to go along with those graphics. And consider where else in the community you could spread the word. So the process to consider when you're going through all of these things, I know we've given you a lot, but again, we will be providing the recording and the slides as well as a takeaway sheet as soon as possible. So you will have those available to you just to kind of, process all the information. But in terms of the process, I would recommend definitely, we're Catholic, right? So we start with prayer and we just ask the Lord to make our efforts fruitful and the Holy Spirit to work in our hearts to give us wisdom and prudence and innovation and creativity and all the good things, and to work in the hearts of those that we are going to approach with our requests. And then after that, take a look at the website again and see what we have there. Consider where you might be able to use it. Look at the resources and just try to strategize. Again, try to keep the asks simple. So rather than just contacting your pastor or your parish secretary or your pro-life group and saying, hey, here's a link, look at all this stuff. That's much less likely to have anything happen just because, everybody these days is very busy and it can be overwhelming. And so you will have a lot higher chance of success if you're able to say, okay, here's this one image. Could you please put this in the bulletin that first weekend of June? All of a sudden you're giving them what time you're asking for something to happen. You're telling them what you would like to happen, and you're giving them exactly what they need in order for it to happen. So try to break down what you want after you review and consider the materials into really simple bite-sized pieces. And that are, very clear and very easy for them to do. So the easier you can make something for someone, the more success you'll have. So also, before moving ahead, once you've decided what you want to ask permission to do, be sure to connect with your pastor. And if you have one, your parish pro-life coordinator, again, just to work together to make sure that everybody's on the same page, to avoid stepping on toes, all that kind of thing. And once you have a plan, then you can prepare, start reaching out to the other groups that we mentioned, the young adults. The people who can vote. So young adults, women's groups, men's groups, prayer groups, wherever you think there might be people who would be interested in what's happening and want to take a stand against it. And then obviously the final step would be just roll everything out and continue to cover it. Just that, again, the Lord and the Holy Spirit will make it fruitful. And entrust everything to the Lord and recognize that He is God, we are not. And so we do our piece and ask Him for His peace back. Just entrusting everything to Him. So just in summary, these are the steps and the action items for you to take away. So number one, the most basic thing, please sign the petition. That's the most important. After that, well, the action alert is actually the most important because it's when you're actually contacting Congress, but the petition will enable you to continue to receive updates from us, and then for all the other reasons why we explained it's important. So, but first things first, so sign the petition. You'll get an automated email. Just give it a little while. Sometimes it takes a little while to come in. If you can't find it, then I will show you where you can find it. But also just make sure you check your junk mail and make sure that your email server allows our emails to come through and that they don't go into spam or trash. Or I know Gmail has several categories of primary, social, and marketing, some promotion. So just be sure that you set our emails to go into your primary one to be sure that you can see it.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it's super important. You can always unsubscribe if if you need to, but if you do want to receive our emails, just make sure that you enable them to come through. After that, make sure that you follow up with Congress through the ways that Kat talked about, the phone calls, the social media, other personal emails, not through our Action Center. And even though if you look on where she showed you that you can find your own members of Congress, if you click on their website, they'll often have an email form. So they don't necessarily have an email address, but if you go onto their website, under the contact section of their website, they'll have an email form where then you can put in your message. Activate your family and friends. Ask them to do 1 through 3. The power of personal invitation is extremely strong. So emailing a mass group of people may get numbers out and up, sure, but personal invitations is also extremely important. So saying, hey, Kat, there's this thing that's happening about, I know that you care a lot about life and the sanctity of life and protecting it. I just want to let you know what's going on, sign the petition. And if you want more information, check out this webinar. So the power of personal invitation, think about who the people are that you know who would be really interested in this and who can really activate others as well. Just because it is so important that we stop this. And then raise awareness in your parish. And again, remember the power of personal invitation there as well. Both to volunteer yourself and then to invite others to help you in that cause. And okay, so before we go on to Kat, is there anything that I missed?
No, I think you covered everything beautifully. And now we have so many great questions. I'd love to try to get to as many of them as possible before our time is up.
I just want to introduce Greg. He is our Associate Director for the Secretariat of Pro-Life Activities. And he is here to help us with questions because he's our policy expert. So, Kat.
All right. Well, I will start with a question from Natalie, who is asking whether they can use the infographic or bulletin announcement in diocesan papers with the proper attribution.
Absolutely. Please use it. Please use everything in any way you can.
That's our main message. Use it anywhere. Post it in the local library if they don't kick you out. Put it in, your child's Catholic school bulletin board. I mean, if you can sneak it in anywhere, you just use it. Take it. It's yours. All right. I see another question. A lot of people have asked about this, actually. Is an email as effective as a paper letter, a personalized paper letter? I can speak to this a little bit from my experience on the Hill. I'm sure Greg can add to it. Right now, because of COVID, so many offices are closed. Even before that, with the anthrax checks and all the time it can sometimes take to get a piece of paper to a congressional member's desk, email is often just as effective, if not sometimes quicker and maybe even more effective. So don't be shy to use email. Another person, I believe it was Brian, asked about whether if you used a form note, like in our action alerts, whether it would be counted as one person, because they do have some systems where they will loop and group petitions together. That's a very good point. When I was working on the Hill, if they did group petitions together, as they sometimes did, it still listed every constituent's name and address who had signed it. So if they do get the action alert, but they know that you're a constituent, they're still going to see however many people signed it. And that's because they still, even if something isn't personalized, they still care to know how many people in their districts care about an issue. So while it will be great to personalize it, we're also trying to keep this low friction and say, if you don't have time to personalize it, it's still valuable. But if you do want to personalize it, great. Is that accurate, Greg? Awesome. So another question, this is a great one. Should we get youth involved? Should we have people under 18 contacting their congressman? You can. From my experience on the Hill, most of the time we really cared about the parents. We cared about the kids. My congressman was very pro, doing things for kids. But because they can't vote and they're not over 18, it's not quite the same as having a voting age person putting in their signature. So I wouldn't focus on youth. I don't think it's as helpful. So we have another question, and this is really for Anne. Is there going to be a printed version of the petition, any way for people who do not use computers as often, maybe the older population, to sign it or to contact Congress?
Well, as far as contacting Congress, you could certainly encourage people to call. To call probably would be the best way to contact Congress directly if they're not able to use the online methods. As far as our own petition, we really don't have the setup for that.
That's okay, though. I mean, really,
Yeah.
with a paper petition, the problem with that is, again, what we said before, most members are not going to sit through a stack of names photocopied. It really has to be digital for the petition part. And for the action alert part, though, we will be giving some kind of paper documentation ultimately to dioceses and parishes. We'll be making it available on the page that Anne showed you. And that will basically be something that you can print and, give to parishes that will have the phone numbers and contact information for your congressman. So the people who maybe don't have as much computer savvy, especially the very elderly, will be able to at least call and know what to say. So we will be making that available at a later date. We've gotten a lot of questions about why parishes are so resistant to sharing this information. Believe me, we get it. We hear about this all the time. And basically what I want to say is that's okay. You're not going to always be able to convince your pastor to put in something that says abortion on it in the parish newsletter. And what we would say is you can say this really is a bipartisan issue. This has had massive support among Democrats because it has actually. The Hyde Amendment and preventing taxpayers from funding abortion has been equally supported by both Democrat and Republican congressmen from everyone who signed an appropriations bill and from Democratic presidents who have signed these into law. So it really isn't a partisan issue or even a political issue. It's a human rights issue. So you can definitely try to say it that way. But if that doesn't change their perspective, which it might not, that's okay. There are other ways to get this word out there. Use your personal networks. Use social media. Find people who you will talk to. If there's a parish pro-life coordinator, team up with them and see if there's a way. Maybe you can table afterwards. Maybe there's something you can do to use your imagination to get the word out on this. But if your priest isn't responsive, pray about it, and I'm sure you'll maybe be able to come up with other ways of engaging, because we're not going to change every mind or heart on this or why it's important, but we can still do something. And that goes for people. I think we got some other comments about how some dioceses weren't responding. Some parishioners were contacting their diocese and they haven't responded. That happens sometimes. It's really tough sometimes to get through to dioceses. Even we have that problem. And we're the USCCB. By the way, the USCCB does not control dioceses. We can't tell dioceses what to do. We don't have that authority. Bishops have their own authority over their dioceses. But yeah, if the diocese doesn't get back to you, you don't have to wait for the diocese to talk to your local priests or even several local priests and other local parishioners. You don't necessarily have to, because a lot of diocesan directors are super busy and they don't necessarily get their mail in a timely way, especially with the way the pandemic has changed working life. Sometimes people just aren't getting their emails or aren't able to respond. Doesn't have to stop you from doing something, using our materials in a different way and getting the word out. Obviously, try to work with your diocesan pro-life director if you can get in touch with them. If you go to usccb.org and to the pro-life page, we do have an area where you can look up your diocesan director and hopefully be able to email them directly through that. And that's just, again, usccb.org. Go down to pro-life activities. You'll see it there. You can type in, you can find your state and find out who your diocesan director is, hopefully. And so try to reach out. But if they are busy or if they, haven't responded, it's okay. There are other ways you can get the message out.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on a particular point here. If you're hearing from a pastor, for example, that this is inappropriate activity for churches, this kind of issue advocacy, that's just simply not correct. Churches cannot get involved in partisan politics, so advocating for candidates for office and that sort of thing, but we can do issue advocacy. It's completely legitimate within our tax-exempt status, and it's not only something we can legally do, it's something we should be doing. So this is issue advocacy on behalf of a pro-life policy. So that should never be an excuse for not taking action.
Just to jump in 1 second. Again, I would just emphasize that what Kat said, that the directors are very, very busy. And so what you might consider doing is just sending them an email or calling them just to say, hey, could I schedule 15 minutes of your time to just talk to you about this and see how I can help? If you're talking to them about how you can help, that will be, more, you may already have, I'm not saying you haven't, but that'll be, an offer to help, I think, will be more readily welcomed than an admonition for them to do more. So just to approach it in a spirit of collaboration.
That's a great point. And that works for pastors too. A lot of the times they're too busy to think about it. So if you just ask for just 10 minutes of their time, sometimes you can explain exactly what Greg did, which is that it's not the same as, advocating for a candidate or a party. It's a bipartisan issue, and issue advocacy as something the church is called to do. We're called to advocate on behalf of the vulnerable. That's our job as Christians, right? So yes, that applies to everyone, recognizing that everyone is stressed, everyone is busy. But if you approach gently with a good time limit, a lot of people are willing to do what they can. One other person has asked, which is a very good question for people who aren't as familiar sometimes with how the USCCB works. So people have asked, well, why doesn't the USCCB just tell all the dioceses and bishops to get this out to all the parishes? And our answer to that is we have asked them to do that. We continue to ask them to do that. But we don't have really, again, the authority to tell a bishop or a diocese what to do. And there are a lot of even like-minded bishops and dioceses who there's a communication glut, right? There's a bureaucracy. So there needs to be both a top-down approach, which we're working on, and also a bottoms-up approach, which is why what each of you are doing is so crucial. You getting 5 of your friends to do this is huge, because those 5 friends might talk to some other people, or there might be someone in their district who is also thinking in that district office, yeah, a lot of people don't like this, So it's so vital that you try to just do what you can to raise awareness about this and to get the word out, because we can't control when we've disseminated information from the top down, who actually catches it and listens to it and does something with it. So we desperately need your help to help stop taxpayer-funded abortion from coming to this country, and to contact your senators, contact your congressmen, and make your voice heard.
Yeah, now somebody was asking, what is the deadline or timeline for contacting our members of Congress? As I mentioned earlier, we are targeting the first week of June as the latest, just to get that big groundswell of public outcry prior to a further action from Congress, which is expected in the summer. However, that being said, Greg, I don't know if you want to speak to the timeline and just say that, there are going to be multiple points at which we need your help and to activate you. So I'm going to stop there and just.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important because as it was mentioned earlier, the Hyde Amendment is a policy that has to be renewed every year as a part of the appropriations process. So the government passes 12 different appropriation bills to fund the government in various aspects of the federal government. It has to do that every year. It has to pass funding every year to keep the government running. And so that process of passing appropriation bills takes time. It usually plays out over several months. It starts with the subcommittee, the various specific subcommittees of the Appropriation Committee working on their particular focus of funding bills. And then once they pass those out to the full Appropriations Committee, then the full Appropriations Committee has to vote on it. And then once that happens, it goes to the entire House for a vote. And then it has to go through the Senate as well. So you've got that same process in the Senate. So this plays out over several months, typically. This year, typically in a year that isn't immediately after a presidential election, where you've got a change in administrations, as we did this year, the process would start a bit earlier in the year. But because of a change in administrations and a number of other things Congress has been doing, this process is pushed back a little bit. So the timeline we expect right now is that the House subcommittee and committee work, appropriations subcommittee and committee work, will take place in June. That's when they'll write up their bills. They'll have hearings and mark up the bills or amend the bills, send them to the full Appropriations Committee for a vote. That should take place in June in the House. And then it's right now the House, the full House, the entire House is scheduled to vote on the bills in July. Again, this is all can change. Lots of things can intervene to change that timeline, but that's what we've been told so far. Subcommittee and committee work in June, and then the full House voting on the appropriation bills in July. So really signing the petition and taking this action while we're pushing for early June, it can be done, throughout June. If you need more time to really spread the message, that can be done anytime throughout June. And then there will be different points in the process where we're going to ask people who have signed the petition to take further action. Sometime the end of May, we anticipate that President Biden's budget will be released, and we're anticipating that in his budget, he'll call for repeal of the Hyde Amendment. That's going to be a point where we're going to make a big deal about that, because that's a big deal for the President of the United States calling for the repeal of the Hyde Amendment. And then when the subcommittees mark up their bills and vote them out without the Hyde Amendment, that's another big deal. We anticipate that's what's going to happen. So that'll be another point where we'll probably urge people to take action, send another email, call their representative, that type of thing. And then before the full House votes on these bills, we'll be asking people to take action again. So there'll be multiple points in this process. And again, the timeline can shift very easily, but that's what we anticipate right now.
Thanks so much, Greg. We had another question, which, again, very good questions. Greg was talking a lot about political leadership, about president, et cetera. And people were wondering, well, should I contact the president, or should I contact the leader of this committee or the speaker of the House? And I guess my answer to that is really the most effective thing you can do is to contact your representative. Most of the time, the president, and especially even leaders of committees, leaders of appropriations committees or health and human services, any kind of, energy and all of those committees, whether it's a subcommittee or a committee, they're still really interested in what their constituents have to say, more so than they are of the general public. So if you know someone on a committee head's district, who is their constituent, and they happen to be the head of a committee that's working on this, then get that person to contact them. But most of the time, trying to contact yourself ahead of a committee who's not your congressman or the Speaker of the House or the president is not going to be nearly as effective as contacting your own congressman and getting everyone you know to contact their own congressmen and their own senators.
Yeah.
One person asked, I know we have to wrap up, but this is important. Some people have asked about whether, if you sign the petition, what if you sign it twice, or will they take that into account? We have ways of clearing and cleaning our list. So don't worry if you've signed it twice, it's okay. It doesn't count twice. We have the technology to sort of clean it as we go. And so if people have signed it 5 times, it'll only count once. So you don't have to worry about that. We've taken care of that on our end.
And I was just going to say, we do need to wrap up. I don't want to, because there's so many other questions that I just wish we could get to. Just to reiterate that we are trying to hit this from every angle we can think of. So we are, in contact with bishops, we are in contact with diocesan directors for Respect Life Ministry. However, and this is something that I really learned only when I started working at the USCCB. I always thought, well, if people are working at the national level, then they're the ones who have the ability to really get things done. And it's just not, we can do a bit, but it really comes down to all of you who are participating in this webinar to push it out there, because we can make the best resources possible. But if it never sees the light of day, then, we can't control that, unfortunately. So just to emphasize the importance of your own action. So again, please sign the petition, do the action alert, tell friends and family, and activate your parish. So we really appreciate any help. Send or submit any questions you have in the follow-up survey, and that'll help us to continue creating resources so that we can all join this fight together. Kat, do you want to close us in?
Sure, we'll just do a quick glory be. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.